When the fog descended, silence settled over the village after the discovery of old Billy's departure. His notes were left stacked, serving as entertainment for the locals who chose to share them with others.
Yes, Ivy. I can see on your face that something is bothering you. Do you want to ask something before Chris has the artificial intelligence read the next text?
Sorry, everyone. It's just that I wanted to understand more about what this is all about. How many notes did old Billy leave? What are the main topics? I'm afraid we might be invading someone's privacy. After all, what is the purpose of these readings?
The simple part to answer is that we found 1,700 notes written over the last 10 years. I believe that about a third of them deal with old Billy's intimate, personal matters, and we won't be sharing those for obvious reasons. However, the remaining notes form a kind of game of seduction in which Billy seeks the best possible way to introduce what he calls the living world. The challenge is that this is a complex form of communication that requires much more than simple reasoning. That's why old Billy takes care to ensure that everyone gains a new perspective on their own senses and develops their ability to see as much of their natural potential as possible with greater clarity. The topics and approach may vary, from the playful use of a children's fable to in-depth analyses of scientific publications, but the purpose remains essentially the same: to strengthen the individual's natural sensitivity. The next note, for example, discusses the importance of art and science in the expansion of consciousness. The path is delicate. It cannot be forced. Joy is fundamental to maintaining the passion that sustains the emotion that connects feeling with reason. The ultimate goal is the natural integration of the being with its own essence.
Number 002, Art, Science, and the Expansion of Consciousness. What we call reality is the exact measure of what we have achieved with our consciousness. The old Billy began. In the past, human reality disregarded the existence of fire, then the wheel, the locomotive, penicillin, the telephone, the satellite, and so on. In any of these past eras, it would have been dangerous to claim that the so-called reality, in which people could understand things, was not the true condition. People were thrown into fire for asserting that the science of the time was wrong. Thus, it becomes clear to draw an effective parallel between consciousness and what is accepted as reality, and by that, it is even more precise to say that when one of these advances, the other follows the evolution in the same measure. However, humans are attached to their concepts and bind themselves to limiting beliefs, with a terrible fear of feeling lost in the space of possibilities, which they would label as outdated and thus vulnerable. So, our race moves forward like a car with the handbrake on. To expand our own consciousness and advance in the understanding of the entirety of the fact, we must be willing to loosen our beliefs. We need to make space for doubts and enjoy demystifying certainties. We need to open our minds. Science is terrified of being disproven, and it panics if it cannot apply its famous method of verification before acknowledging the rotational and translational movements of the planet as well as its shape. However, once proof is found, scientists work hard to ensure that reality rapidly adjusts to the new measures and parameters. But art? What note does art play in this human band? Art possesses what is accepted as poetic license, the permission of what if. Art can point to possibilities of expansion without causing conflicts. It plants seeds and stimulates science. Art is the one that points the way without causing accidents. 99% of my writings are nudges for the expansion of consciousness, and literature is my defense against the straitjacket. People don't understand the parables. They don't understand the difference between figurative and literal meaning. I write desert, space, to communicate a moment, time. I write oasis, city in the desert, to communicate relief. With that, I dribble reason, break through the resistance of certain limiting beliefs, and I signal that there is life within the things of life. I go further and make the make-believe open a channel of communication between the living subatomic particles that, grouped together, form our bodies and all the other chemical elements that sustain matter, whether dense or subtle. Art allows a river to appreciate the presence of a flower. Art allows gentleness to alter the shape of a rock and emanate vibrational musical frequencies for human ears. Art gives the taste of a broader perspective of reality and inclines humanity to apply science in new measurements. But the day that art seeks to contact minds and be, itself, rational, it will lose itself and lead humanity to suicide through atrophy. This deformation of unlearning to see between the lines, of absorbing through emotion and reading with the senses. Art helps science, but art does not do its work. The mission of art is precisely to divert attention from the rational and disarm the containers of extraordinary perceptions of latent potentials. Who said that man is only endowed with 5 senses? Who said that data transmission happens only inside the brain? When in art, does it allow a simple table to come alive as a witness to a crime? Art is saying that the fact is recorded everywhere because it is a living fact that happened, and because it is true, it will exist in reverberation indefinitely everywhere. It is not the table that will open its mouth before the judge to describe the cruelty or fatality of the event. It is the developed human capacity that will know, by touching the table, to access what happened beside it. There will be no true expansion of human consciousness as long as we are loving with our minds or simply existing without living. Consciousness and reason are not synonyms, and it's time we give recognition to that. Reason does not elevate consciousness. It is consciousness that educates reason. Never try to decode literature through rational codes. Never look at a painting with technical judgment parameters. The mission of art is to sensitize, to dissolve the locks that seal human perception so that it can look and see nature as it truly is, without monetary filters. A tree is a tree, not firewood, not paper, not any other form of access to money. The tree and everything else is what it is in itself, and we will have to learn to recognize the life within that which we insist on calling a thing. Human consciousness at its current stage is synonymous with unconsciousness of the living. Consciousness needs to change reality in order to expand. Consciousness uses art to propose this change and science to make it possible. Reality, science, and art evolve in parallel, reducing ignorance and limiting beliefs. Reality needs art to break its limits. Reality needs science to stop being small. This is the game of consciousness asserting itself as more and greater because, in the final analysis, it is reality. Consciousness has no limits to transform reality.
This text is a profound exploration of the interplay between art, science, consciousness, and reality, positioning each as vital forces in humanity's ongoing evolution. What do you think, Brian? Old Billy emphasizes that reality is not an absolute truth, but rather a reflection of the current level of human consciousness. Historical examples, fire, the wheel, penicillin, etc., illustrate how expanding consciousness reshapes our understanding of reality, showing that reality evolves with our perceptions and awareness. However, humans resist this evolution due to fear and attachment to outdated beliefs, likened to a car with the handbrake on.
Old Billy also asserts that consciousness transcends reason, reversing the common belief that reason elevates consciousness. Consciousness is described as the educator of reason, showing that true growth comes from expanding perception, not just accumulating knowledge.
I liked Mr. Billy's clarities about the interplay of art, science, and reality. The text proposes a dynamic relationship. Art expands consciousness by challenging reality's limits. Science grounds and applies these expanded possibilities. Reality evolves as consciousness and its tools, art and science, advance. Key insight: human consciousness must move beyond mere existence to living in awareness of the interconnected, vibrant reality that surrounds us.
I do agree with you, Jessica. The text is a compelling manifesto for the expansion of human consciousness through the harmonious interplay of art, science, and reality. It calls for a collective shift from rationality and materialism towards sensitivity and holistic awareness, where art provides the vision, science the application, and consciousness the driving force. By embracing doubt, dissolving rigid beliefs, and acknowledging the living nature of existence, humanity can transcend its current limitations and redefine what it means to be alive.
Despite of the apparent complexity, this Billy's text resonated with me in a way that I don't know how to explain. Perhaps I don't need to? I will play again just in case something was out of my perception.
Is life that goes on.